All right, Bigfoot Society, you've got the privilege of talking to Brad today. Brad is a mountain man living off grid in the Smoky Mountains down there in Tennessee. Welcome to the show, Brad. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great. Appreciate the opportunity to share my experiences.
Absolutely. Want to point out a few things about Brad's setup, which is probably the coolest setup a guest has ever had. Brad is literally hanging out outside by the fire. So if you might see some smoke come across Brad's screen, that's just part of the ambiance. Hats off to him. I guess it's a little bit chilly where you're at today, right, Brad?
Yeah, it's about 35 degrees right now.
Yeah, right. Out there where what you're doing off grid, you're used to it. What a place to do that too, down in the Smokies. Beautiful area. But Brad, I know a bit about what you've experienced over the years, and it sounds like your story goes way back to different places. So I would say, feel free to take us back to when you first started having experiences with what you found out to be Bigfoot.
Okay, well, like I say, I'm used to the cold weather because I born and raised in northern Utah in the Rocky Mountains, and spent my childhood growing up in a little town called Huntsville that nobody knew about back then, but 2002 Winter Olympics came through there, and that changed everything. Everyone knows about it now, but part of why I'm in Tennessee currently. But when I was a child, I had a friend that lived, we'll say, in the northeast corner of the Huntsville Valley area there. And me and him and two other friends of ours, so it was Richard, Sean, and Jeff, I believe, was he didn't hang out with us much, so I'm a little blurry on his name, but I'm pretty sure his name was Jeff. But anyways, me, Richard, Sean, and Jeff was out there. And behind Richard's house, there was a hill that just went up into the mountains. There was a field behind his house first, and horses and stuff, and then just went up into the foothills and on up into the mountains from there. And we decided that we were going to hike up to this point that we could see from his backyard up there, which from his backyard, we thought that was the top of the mountain. We found out later it was just a top of a hill. But we were little kids. And so anyway, we packed our lunches and we headed off. We took off on up the mountain. We was going to make our climb to the summit. And on the way up there, I'm not sure what initially caught our attention about these trees on the hillside, because the whole hillside's pretty, at this time of the year, it was summertime. This would have been sometime around 1776, 4th of July celebration was going on that year. And so the whole hillside's kind of a yellow color with kind of the gray green of sagebrush mottled in with it, with an occasional juniper tree. And most of the junipers that grew on those hillsides were 10 to 15 feet tall. And anyway, something caught our attention about these three trees that were up there. And we noticed them, and I pointed out that, look, they're in a perfect triangle the way they're positioned, and, just silly stuff kids talk about. Anyway, we continued climbing up, and as we kept going up the mountain, something about those trees kept catching my attention. I wasn't focused on them, but something just kept drawing my attention over that way. And I started noticing that, God, those trees seem to be in really weird position compared to the way they looked before, because, sure, my angle on the mountain had changed, but it just didn't seem right, the position of those trees anymore. But anyway, we just continued on up and got to the summit that we found out was just a little foothill, basically. In the Rocky Mountains, things get pretty high up there. And anyway, so we decided, well, we've made it here. We stopped down and we was eating our lunch. Well, while we was eating our lunch, something caught my attention. Again, I looked back over there, it was now to the left of me, and I'm noticing there's only 2 trees over there. And I thinking, am I crazy? I know there were 3 trees. There's only 2 trees on that hillside. And so I turned to my friends and asked them, how many trees did we see on that hillside? And they're all like, there was 3. Where did the 3rd tree go? And so all of a sudden, there's 4 kids, their hair on the back of our necks stood up, and we're like, when did trees start walking away? Because there's, only 2 trees there now. And now, like I say, these trees are between 10 to 15 feet tall, most of them. So whatever it was that was there that walked away was something that looked like a 10 to 15 foot tall, kind of conical shaped, like a juniper tree grows out in the open sunlight like that. And we, at that point, decided it was time to head back home. And we took off running down that hillside. And we got down to the bottom and back into the field with the horses and stuff. And we decided, okay, we're safe. We slowed down. We was just walking across the field at that time. The horses in the field, they were used to us being back there all the time. They weren't reacting to us whatsoever. We was about halfway across that field, and those horses went crazy. Like, I've never seen them act like that. And they ran out towards the way the field was. It's kind of a big, huge square field, and their house sat in the front right corner of the field. And so part of the field had road frontage on it. And they ran all the way up to that road side of the fence and was just back and forth, like they were looking for a way to get out of that pasture. Just completely irrational behavior. Never seen him behave like that before that. And so we all just like, well, we need to get inside. So we ran inside the house, and, I remember his mom yelling at us, "What, you kids settle down, whatever you're up to, you go settle down." So we went and hid in his room until it was time to go home. Well, that next morning, Richard called me, and he said, "Did it come to your house?" And I said, "What?" And he said, "Did it come to your house?" Sorry, I'm getting a little teared up because rest in peace, Richard's not with us anymore. But I said, "No, it didn't come. It didn't come to my house. What are you talking about?" And he says, "Well, last night, something pounded on my bedroom wall." And he says, and I looked, and I could see its head looking through the window. Now, Richard's bedroom, they had kind of one of those, it was a 1-story home, but it had those high up windows that only folded out. So they weren't down normal eye level, they were like along the ceiling line of the room. And so for something to be looking in through that window from outside, it had to be 10, 11 feet tall, which would match with the size of what we assumed was a tree up on the hillside. But he says, yeah, it looked in the window and just stood there for a minute, and then he heard a low growl, like just a rumbling growl, and then it walked away. And we decided that was our warning not to go back up on that hillside again, and we never did. We, just, okay, we get the message. We won't mess with your area, and you don't come scare us in the middle of the night no more. So we didn't really tell anyone about that because a lot, we wondered if we'd get in trouble for going hiking up the hill like that, because I don't think we really told his mom what we were up to. We was just, kids off adventuring. But, so we never really talked about it or anything after that. But then years later, I started bow hunting. And this is what attracted me or got my attention to your podcast. Is you were interviewing, I can't remember his name, but some guy there in Ogden area, and he was talking about Curtis Creek. And that's the area where I used to go bow hunting. And I started going up there bow hunting. And the first year I was up there, I was with a group of guys. And we'd gone in further back in than he was talking about. Arbs Basin's about halfway to get to where we were going. We were back in by a place that everyone calls the island. And it's just the way the road goes around a certain high mountain. It's kind of creates an island the way the road goes around it. So they call it that. But I used to set my tree stand up on the top of that mountain and hunt bow hunt up there on top of that mountain that was the center of the island. But anyway, we were off on the east side of the island that year, and I heard something in the middle of the night come through camp. And it was obviously not moose or elk, it was bipedal. You can tell when something's walking on 2 feet. It sounds different. And I was in a tent. And so I just kind of laid there and was real quiet and listened to whatever walked through, and it walked on through and kept going. It didn't stop and mess with anything. It just walked through camp, whatever it was. But I could tell it was big. I could tell it was bipedal. And I laid there and I wonder if that's that thing we saw when I was a kid, Well, that was all that happened that year. The next year up there hunting and I was with the same guys in the same area. And I didn't hear anything, but got up the one morning and they're all like, "Did you hear that last night?" What? Oh, there was some kind of something out there in the forest making all kinds of noise and busting branches and tearing things up. And I was like, "Oh, no, I slept right through it. Didn't hear nothing." Well, that night I did hear. And I think it might have been because I was keeping an ear out, sleeping lighter than normal. I don't know. But something ran through the forest above where we were at. And now I've hiked up into that area, and you can barely wiggle your way through it. It's so thick. It's just thick conifer forest, just hard to get through. And something went through there like it was running through the park. And branches and just the sound was just unbelievable how much commotion it made as it just ripped its way through the forest, whatever it was. And, every one of us came out of our tents. I was in a trailer actually that year. And come out of our tents and trailers going, "What is going on?" And we didn't hear anything else. So we all just kind of settled down and went back to bed. Well, the following year up there bow hunting, I didn't have any experiences, but the year after that, I was up there and I'd gone up by myself. And I was on the other side of the island, so this would be the west side of that area. And I pulled into a little spot right past this place they call Red Ponds. And I was sleeping in my truck. No camper, no nothing, just sleeping in the back of the truck. I got the big crew cab. And something hit the side of my truck. And it rocked that truck. It woke me up from dead sleep. And I, looking around, trying to figure out what's going on, shining flashlight, never saw nothing, no explanation for what had hit the truck, what happened. And so I was awake from that point till sunlight started coming up. And I got up to hike up to my tree stand to do some bow hunting before the sun came up. And I hiked up there to that thing, I don't know how many times. I got about halfway up there, and I got struck with a sense of fear and unease and just discomfort that I can't explain. Because I didn't hear nothing. I didn't see nothing. And I'm used to being out. I mean, I'm out here in the woods by myself for days on end. And I'm used to that. But something spooked me so bad that I turned around, went back, got in my truck, and decided I was done hunting that season. And I didn't hunt that season. So I decided I was going to get over that spooking and took my wife up there camping the next year, about 3 weeks before the bow hunt started. And we went over. There was all kinds of people up there riding ATVs and campers and there, all kinds of just activity going on, just up and down the roads. And so we had gone over to a spot that was kind of back off away from all the roads. And it was just another spot that's kind of southeast of that island area there. And set up camp there. And we was having a nice time. Well, I had a job interview. We were spending the whole week up there. And I had a job interview on Hill Air Force Base. I had to run down there to go to an interview. And so I went down to that and left my wife up there. And I wasn't that worried about it because there was all those people that had been there all, the whole time we'd been up there. Well, I got done and was coming back in that afternoon, and there's nobody. There's nobody in any of the camp spots, no ATVs, motorcycles coming up down the road. I mean, everyone had just gone home. And this was a Monday, so it was Monday morning that I had gone down to do the interview. And so the further I get back in there, because, it's about 8 miles back in there from where you turn off the pavement to get all the way back into where we was at. And the further I got back in there without seeing any other campers and stuff, the more I started worrying about my wife. And was happy when I got there to find her okay and stuff, but just nobody up there at all. Not even ATV riders and stuff. I'd never seen it like that. Even bow hunting, there's always somebody up there riding during, But anyway, so I was happy to find her okay, and we settled in for the night. And we're sitting around the campfire and just doing our thing. All of a sudden it couldn't have been 100 yards away, just up on top of the hill that we was right there next to, came a howl, scream, I don't know what to call it. It was just a huge, screeching, howling, just deep, thunderous, like a lion and a gorilla and an elephant all going off at the same time or something. Just undescribable, but it was obviously a displeasure with us being there, was the immediate message I got from the sound of it. It was a territorial, get out of my house kind of just howl, just angry howl. And my wife, of course, looks over at me and was like, what's that? And I'm thinking, okay, what am I going to tell her this is without terrifying her? Because at that point, I was convinced that was Bigfoot. But I can't tell my wife that, right? So I'm trying to say, well, maybe it was a moose or an elk or something that got damage to its throat, or trying to come up with some crazy explanation to not have my wife freak out in the middle of the forest in the middle of the night. And anyway, she wasn't buying my crap. She said, I don't know what it was, but I'm going to bed. And I tried to pretend like I wasn't spooked, because I was really trying not to get her scared. And so I sat out there by the fire for about 15 minutes, and the longer I sat there, the more spooked I got, because I was hearing movement, like it was slowly making its way closer and closer and closer through the trees towards me. And so finally, I decided, okay, I'm going to quit pretending to be a tough guy, and I'm going in the trailer. So I went in and told her, yeah, I think whatever it was went away, and we managed to settle down and go to sleep that night. But we got up and left that next morning. We didn't stay. We was going to stay like 3 or 4 more days than that, and we got up and went home. And that's the last time I ever went up to that area and camped or hunted or anything and then we moved to Tennessee. And so that brings me to the next phase of my story, because the land we bought is completely undeveloped, off grid. I mean, first thing I had to do was create the road to get in here to even start clearing an area to start building anything. You know, everything you see behind me, I've milled out of my own forest and hand nailed together myself. But the beginning of that process, coming up in here, the little road I'd cut in and stuff, I'd been up here working all day, gone home one night, and had me a little excavator up here. I was clearing out a spot to get an RV into. And I come up the next morning, and I had to park at that point because I hadn't gravelled the whole road, and it was wintertime, so the road would get real mucky, so I couldn't drive the truck all the way up in. So I'd have to park the truck down at what I called the turnaround spot at that time, and then I carried 2 cans of diesel fuel up the mountain to get to the excavator and get back to work. Well, I got up to where the excavator was, and there was a tree, sapling, well, big, 20-foot tall sapling, had been bent over across the road, and the top of it was tied into a root ball and stuff in a way to where I literally had to get a saw and cut it to get it loose. It was like it was just twisted into there with such force that it locked in, and I had to cut it to get it to come out. Now, no other tree around that had fallen that could have possibly pushed it over and made it do that. No explanation, whatever. I immediately took it as a sign that something was telling me that it didn't want me here. So I spent a couple days wandering around the forest and communing with the forest and communing with God. So, just explaining my intention and saying prayers and talking to the forest and anything that may be listening to let them know my intentions here, that I plan on being part of the forest. I'm not here to take it away from anybody, And since doing that, I haven't had anything happen that seemed to be aggressive, which I'm very grateful for. But I do get notices, I guess is the best way to put it. They're not aggressive. They're not, nothing screaming or howling at me in the night, nothing like that. But just noises in the forest that don't coincide with the sounds that I normally hear. I'm sure during this podcast you've heard the pileated woodpeckers going off in the background and the little wrens, and the forest has got its own music that it makes all day long. But I'm so in tune and familiar with it that anything that's outside of the norm catches my attention. And I hear knocks. There's trees there's a ridge line here that I find trees that are all broken the same direction, showing a path, guiding you right up the path if you watch for them and follow them. They're all there, and they're all trees that are broken. There's trees all around them. No other reason why no other trees broken, just one tree right there, and snapped in a way that is, obviously it's been grabbed up high and snapped over. You know, the wind doesn't just snap the top of a tree off, like it would bend the top of a tree like that and not cause chaos to the trees around it at the same time. And so I got that going on all the time here. But back up on the back 40 of the property, I've only been up there a few times, but we found an old cabin up in there. It's an old hunting cabin somebody had built and abandoned. And it's hard to get to because, well, first off, it's got trees that have fallen over on top of it. And then all the way around it, the whole forest, there's trees that are fallen. And they're fallen just in a way to where they create a barrier. It's not like they all got blown by the wind and fell over one direction. They're like lattice work, and they're not chopped down. They're pushed over. Or they're root ball still attached, tree falling over. And both times I've been up there and fighting my way through to even get to that cabin, I've just got the direct impression that something did that intentionally and doesn't want anyone up there at that cabin. I mean, that's the only conclusion I can come to. If I could see, because I know the way the winds come into this mountain, the way they blow, they come from one direction. They don't blow back from the other direction hard enough to blow a tree over, because they'd have to come over the mountain and then back down to do that. And so just the way those trees are falling, it's like, okay, now these aren't fallen because of wind. Something has made these trees fall over. And so I just kind of leave that area alone up there. I figure I don't need to go up there for anything anyway. And it's hard to get up in there. And I just get the impression somebody uses that and doesn't want me up there messing around. Eventually I'll probably build me a road up there enough to clear out some of that stuff out of the cabin. It's got all kinds of usable stuff in it still. It's just hard to even get to, and I can't imagine trying to haul stuff out of there by hand. I'd have to build a road there to even do anything about it. But just kind of a crazy spot up there that I can only assume it's the same creatures that have been making the other signs around here in the holler that just, and you can call me crazy, but I believe it's Bigfoot.
I don't think you're crazy at all. That sounds like the potential for a very active area. You said, is it just you there, or your wife is there as well?
Me, my wife, and her cat. Been here about 3 years now.
Cool. Does the cat ever react to anything in a weird way?
Yeah, absolutely. There's times when the cat, he wants to be out and underfoot all the time. He wants to be hanging out with me when I'm out doing things. His favorite thing to do is wander through the forest with me, and especially if the mama's coming with us, then he's really happy. But he gets times where he doesn't want to be outside unless I'm outside. And he's usually quite independent, wanting out, monstering all night long. He's living his best life up here. But he does. He definitely has times where he wants to be inside and he wants to be close to daddy. He wants somebody to make him feel safe. And I noticed the behavior, I guess I just always assumed he had a run-in with a coyote or possum or what, a raccoon, because we have the whole gambit up here. We got bears, we got it all. I've had turf wars with the bears, letting them know that, no, they can't scare me out of here. And, learning to speak their languages, marking my territory. And but they finally quit leaving us alone. They've decided I'm more danger than I'm worth. But we get all kinds of critters here. I mean, they're just, we're out in the woods. And so definitely a lot of
Absolutely.
activity from wildlife just in general. But like I say, I do know there's things I hear in the forest that they don't account for normal sounds. They're unusual
Absolutely.
activity.
Has your wife ever experienced anything when she's been, I don't know if she goes on walks out in the woods as well, or?
She doesn't go out on her own. She stays. She's pretty dependent on me as far as feeling safe and secure up here. She stays in the trailer a lot of the time, or she has business that she runs out of Bristol, and so she goes there and does that a lot too. So she's not as adventurous and outdoorsy as I am, but I think her only real experience has been the camping experience in Utah, and then the things that I've pointed out to her, because I've shown her the signs that I've noticed around here, and she's like, "Oh, wow, yeah, okay, I see what you mean." Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So you're seeing a lot of trees that are affected. Have you ever seen anything that looks like footprints around your cabin?
Well, footprints would be tough around here. I mean, I've got ground that I've cleared that I watch for stuff like that, but the only thing I've ever seen is just bear tracks and other smaller critters. But the forest around here is just covered with leaf bed. So, and anywhere that those leaves aren't there, it's because there's a rock sticking up through it. And so there's not really any bare soil. Now, having said that, I've seen a lot of places where something has slid in the leaf bed that, to me, looks like it would have to be either a bear fell down and slid a little ways, or something with a really big foot stepped and slid a little ways. But it's a big slide, And if you've ever hiked around in an area like this, you know what I'm talking about. When you're going up a hill and step on, and the leaves slide under your foot, it makes a little pile of leaves with a skid above it that makes it obvious something slid there. And the size of a skid like that my foot would make was only half the size of these that I've seen. And I wear a size 13. So something with big feet, it looks like to me, has gone up a few of these slopes and slid in areas getting up to the next spot. And that's the only thing I could test, unless a bear, like I say, it would take like a bear bouncing off his butt coming down there to make some similar size skid like that. Yeah. So once again, no real tangible evidence, and things that I have seen, it's, you either understand and believe, or you come up with some reason not to, I guess. But I know what I've heard, and that sound we heard in Utah. There's one of the Bigfoot shows that was on TV. I don't remember which one, but they were up that same area. They was coming up from the other side up in Logan, Utah. But those canyons, if you follow them up, they come to the same point up there at Lost Creek area. But they was doing a show up there, and they were out doing their nighttime investigation, and I heard that howl on their show and immediately recognized it, and they heard it too, and they were like all wide-eyed. But yeah, I've heard that howl in real life and on television, and immediately
Gotcha.
recognized it. It's unmistakably the same howl.
A really interesting story how things have followed you since that early age, and now it sounds like you're dealing with it pretty regularly on this property.
Yeah, I get the impression that they've accepted my my explanation as to why I'm here and what I'm doing, and they've accepted me as part of the forest. Even the animals, the way the animals act. There's birds that come check on me every day. If I'm not out doing my thing by 7 o'clock in the morning, there's birds outside the trailer chirping and making a commotion until I come out, and they know that everything's back to normal. The noisy guy's back at his game. But the animals, they've accepted me. The forest is, I feel like it's embraced us here. And beyond that, I feel like the Sasquatch presence has also accepted that we're just part of the forest. We're not a problem, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of the energy I get even when I out in the forest. Except when I was back up in that back corner of the property. That's the only place I've been out here since that initial encounter here that I felt a little uneasy about being there. And I have to wonder if one of them wasn't close by saying, hey, you're kind of getting into our area. Because I think they have that ability to, whether it's the what do they call it, the infrasound or the ultrasound or whatever, the deep rumbling sound, they can, whatever. I'm not a wise man. I don't know all the lingo,
infrasound.
But I think it has something to do with that. I experienced when I was bow hunting up in Utah and what I've experienced up there, because just a unexplained uneasiness, which isn't natural for me.
Absolutely. Has anything else happened on that property that was out of the ordinary, but maybe not related to Sasquatch in your mind?
Well, I have to wonder if there isn't some kind of either Native American or possibly Civil War era trauma here that can't really say that, any spirits or ghosts or anything like that have manifested or anything, but just sometimes at night when I'm sitting outside listening to the forest, I hear what sounds almost like, I don't know if it's a male or female, but just like a soft sigh, like a and every time I hear it, I always look around and listen and wonder, God, did I hear somebody sigh? But I never do hear any follow up or get anything. But I do hear that probably once every 2 or 3 months. I'd spend a lot of time sitting out at night, just enjoying the sounds of the forest, watching the bats flying through the moonlight. And I'm just an outdoors guy. I enjoy being out here by myself. Most people think I'm crazy, but it's just who I am.
It sounds great to me. It sounds like a great idea. I think more people are trying to do it, to be honest.
I'm not gonna pull anybody's leg. It's a hard lifestyle to take on. There's, you got to be willing to take on whatever comes your way. But it's definitely rewarding, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. I feel like I'm the richest guy in the world, even though I ain't got any money in the bank.
At this point, Brad and I lost connection, possibly due to the off-grid setup that Brad was utilizing. But we were able to have a great conversation nonetheless. Thank you to Brad for figuring out how to do what he was able to do with his off-grid lifestyle and coming on the podcast today to share what he's experiencing down there in Tennessee.